Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in what feels like forever, we are back with a prediction show. This weekend is Survivor Series WarGames. There are currently 4 matches on the card, and we're also looking back at last weekend's WWE action from Friday Night SmackDown and Monday Night Raw. As always, let's just get in there. Back again, 3-man booth, once again, kicking off by talking about SmackDown on Friday night. And before I throw over to our resident SmackDown expert, Daz, I'm asking these guys a question tonight. Has SmackDown reached a low point? I thought Friday night was a really weak show, and beyond that, we have a pre-taped Friday night go home for a Saturday night PLE. Now, I understand it's Thanksgiving in America, and it's Thursday night. Triple H wants to give everybody an extra day off for their family, which is great. However, I would argue in the era of no house shows, why not do Survivor Series last weekend or do it on Sunday night and figure out a way to make it work, really get an extra day off somewhere or whatever. Daz, I'd rather reach SmackDown, and I'm looking at the spoilers for Friday night because we're not going to avoid them while we're predicting later on, but it's a pretty poor show, isn't it?
I mean, to answer your question, SmackDown hit a low point about 6 months ago. It has been really, really poor, and I won't go over loads of old ground because we talk about it every week. The momentum has totally fallen off since it went to 2 hours. The good news is it is going back to 3 hours, but the show just seems to get weaker and weaker. I'm glad that I've seen the dirt sheets. I'm glad it's pre-recorded for Friday night because I won't be watching it. I already know all the outcomes, and none of it interests me in terms of wanting to watch it play out in person. And I will catch up with insert open challenge match here because even though I already know who answers it, etc., it's still worth potentially watching it. Not really looking forward to what SmackDown has to offer, especially given normally the go-home shows before the PLE is normally when SmackDown excels a little bit. It's normally you get a better show, but the fact we're pre-recording just because it's holiday weekend, it's almost like they knew that ahead of time when they booked Survivor Series that weekend. So, I've really lacklustre SmackDown, but it's bunched in with a hell of a lot more episodes recently.
Yeah, I thought that SmackDown this week was fine. Looking at next week's this week's, because time, I thought it looked a little weak because obviously you're kind of stuck trying to not give away too much, but it is an issue. Because as you say, just a little bit of smarter scheduling would have just avoided it, and then you could give people the night off. I don't know how else you would do it. Maybe you do like the Wednesday, Thursday or something. I don't know, but it's always going to be the way of it. But it's only really, they only ever do like Christmas Day and this. Really, they will force them to do pretty much everything else. So I guess
for a long time, the Madison Square Garden holiday show was Boxing Day every year. So they have got history. I mean, obviously it's difficult. It's different for us over here talking about the day after Thanksgiving. It's not a holiday over here. We don't know how long it's supposed to last, but it does feel like the Americans start their holidays in mid-November and carry on to about February.
Which I'm very jealous of, and I think that certainly this side of the pond we should definitely bring that in.
I don't know how else could have done it. Obviously, if they did do Survivor Series last weekend, then you can't really pre-tape SmackDown before the PLE. Probably need to pre-tape SmackDown on the same night as Raw, which is a hell of a taping. But the reason I was opening up with such a kind of strong opening statement on the weakness of SmackDown was what was pre-advertised for Friday we've just had was Carmelo Hayes versus Bronson Reed in a one-on-one match, which is confusing because Bronson Reed's involved in the WarGames match and Carmelo Hayes is absolutely nowhere near it. Penta versus Finn Balor, which is fine. Two good wrestlers having a match and their stories are somewhat intertwined and have been for a few months. And then DIY versus Fraxium, which actually wasn't a particularly great match after Daz and I praised them both on the squash at the weekend. It was fine. Maybe being overly critical because of how good they have been this year and how strong that division has been. We're expecting essentially perfection. And then your main event was the show ending with introducing AG Elite to WarGames, which we were all expecting, and that takes me on to point number 2. This is going to sound really harsh, but should AG Elite be in this match at all? I know she was away for a while there. She was, I think, from my understanding, it was commitments prior to every signing with WWE, which is understandable. But I've obviously been quite strong vocally in saying that she didn't look particularly great at WrestlePalooza, to the point where halfway through the match, even though we all knew her and Pug were winning, I was thinking they really should find a way to switch this ending up, because it's not going to look great, especially Becky tapping out, which is what ultimately happened. She'll do a few spots, she can be protected, but I am really struggling to see, like, if you look at the other 9 people in this match, we've pretty much praised them all year. And they were going to have, to me, an obvious weak link in the match. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. If anyone wants to jump in first.
I'm in two minds, right? Because Becky being in the match is good for it. And I think AJ, it's better for AJ Lee to be in it. It'll do more for AJ than it will for the match. I think that it's the perfect opportunity for her to try and bridge the gap. She was put in a mixed tag match for a return. Such a long layoff makes sense. But we've also had another layoff since then. It's been 2 months since she's wrestled in the ring. No doubt she's been working around her other commitments and training, etc. But there's nothing quite like the real things. It's a good chance for her to be protected, because there is 9 other people in the match. She will do some spots. She'll probably be mainly in-ring drama, facing off, etc., etc. But I think she's only in it purely because they need Becky in it. But it's the perfect way to take Becky away from Maxine Dupree and allow Maxine to run her own IC title run, because we all know Becky should realistically take that title back if they keep that feud going. So I don't hate the fact she's in the match. She doesn't really make sense in the team that she's in. The people she's teamed up with, it doesn't really make sense, but it's a bit like the men's WarGames match, isn't it? They referred to it last night as All-Star. It's the All-Star game in wrestling terms. WarGames, and I've got a feeling that's what TKO want it to become. They're going to run it every year, and it's just going to be the biggest people in your company, and they'll just shoehorn a story in for it. So I don't hate that she's in it, but I'm not necessarily looking forward to the work that's going to be in show technically.
I think, Ross, your thoughts on the fact that there maybe is other people who could have been put into the match from a showcase perspective. We've said a lot this year that people like Bailey, Lyra have missed out in PLEs later in the year that have had stories that were waiting for the trigger to get pulled on. Perhaps there's other people who could have been involved as well from a showcase perspective, but Daz as well made a valid point there. You've essentially got 2 All-Star games. And the title of this podcast is tonight is, well, the working title at the moment, depends on how the top conversation goes, is this men's WarGames match still is even worth having a men's WarGame match? And I thought the women's stories were slightly better coming into it than the men's, but we will touch on the men's later on, because I think I have now got a little bit of intrigue towards it at least. Is there a missed opportunity to put somebody in that 10th spot as a showcase?
You could always have that opinion. I don't think it's necessarily invalid. I do think, though, on the whole, if you are expecting an actual run from AJ Lee, like a genuine, like, she's not going to be away for another couple of months again, like this is now, we're in here, we're cemented, here we go. It is a really, really good way to bring her in. That I think overall, if that's the direction you take, I'm okay with it. Because, yeah, you can be involved in the spot fest and you can be protected by the other people. You just need 3 minutes. That's all she needs is 3 minutes. Really, like 3 good minutes would be enough. And then you just build her up and up and up from there, because as we all kind of know, these WarGames matches are what sets off 3 separate feuds from each one from now right through. So if they pull the trigger and do that right, I think it's okay. I just don't know who they would have slotted in otherwise, because you couldn't not have Becky in there. So I'm not entirely sure who the face slot would have went to for it to make sense, unless you were just chucking someone in. But like we say, generally good matches make up for it. So maybe time will tell.
I actually think there's a really cool pairing on SmackDown that I thought would have been good for this match, and Jade Cargill and Chelsea Green, I think, would have been 2 really good additions to this match, because we're not doing anything with Jade anyway. Survivor Series weekend, you know what I mean? So
technically they're doing something for this that weekend. It's already happened, and we won't see it.
Yeah, I know, but it's a Friday night. You know what I mean? So
I know.
We could have a Chelsea in the face team, and that's massive for her. And Jade will look good in that heel team. And I'm not going to say too much because predictions are on their way. So I think that would have been a much better pairing, but I get it. You want your all-star. You've got the biggest return in women's wrestling in who knows how long, and arguably still one of the biggest names in women's wrestling in Becky Lynch. So, you know what I mean? They're trying to sell tickets, get bums and seats. I get it. Makes sense.
Aye. I mean, I won't touch too much on the Chelsea green, because as much as we're not going to ignore the spoilers for this week, we will not deliberately just say, here is what happens. Although we're going to do that in a minute in one of the segments. So that gives me a nice segue into the one, not this, well, not in the same way, but see if you take the US Open Challenge off at a SmackDown right now, which there is no US Open Challenge on Friday night this week, so there is a possibility, I guess, that it could happen Saturday night. Hold out hope. It is really holding this show up, isn't it? And even then, it's one good match a week versus what we like to talk about is the storytelling and the psychology behind the decisions and behind what's going on and where it's going to go. So I had a thought on this, and I'm going to save one bit of it for later on, because I want to talk about this under the Cena tournament. But when you see Sami Zayn and where he's went since he dropped the title, the US Open Challenge did nothing for him, really. He's been demoted from being in the WarGames match last year to a 5-on-5 that happened the night before, which, spoiler alert, he does not survive, and the other team wins. So it's just like, did they get that right? The matches are good, but it's not. Has it done its job, really? Beyond just having one guaranteed good match on a Friday night?
I think it has. Purely on the basis this is going to sound really, really harsh and like I'm really ragging on the guy, right? But I'm not. I just think it really solidifies the point I've been making since we started this podcast, that Sami Zayn just isn't good enough. And I think that his work with the US Open, the work started with John Cena, obviously, ended with Sami Zayn with the US Open Challenge. When he put that on the line, you were getting good wrestling matches, but I feel like crowds were popping for the other people involved rather than Sami. And I think the come off from it has been that Ilya's is far more entertaining than Sami's was. But Sami's felt good in the moment. But I think Ilya's is way more entertaining in terms of wrestling, because all he wants to do is wrestle. We don't need that 5-7 minute promo pre-match to get everybody hyped. You hear Ilya's music and you just lock in for a good wrestling match. I think it's doing the right. I think the US Open Challenge is helping the crowd warm to Ilya. There's a core support in the crowd who will know Ilya from his NXT days, a bit like us, and is fully aware of what he can do. But I think right now he's putting on a wrestling clinic on a weekly basis, and it's making him familiar. I can't wait till we get out of this John Cena tournament with Gunther, because that is very much someone I would like to see answer the Open Challenge at one point, if it ever makes its way onto a PLE, because they too will make magic in the ring. I think it's doing great work for Gunther. But I do feel like it's holding SmackDown back. I feel like it's hindering the overall show on SmackDown, because it's so far and away the best part of the show that
when it opens the show, that's
seeing that, yeah, that's it. So you maybe need to think about moving it to later in the show. Personally, it should main event for me every week. It should be the main event. But I mean, look at what the main event was on Friday night. We ended the show with AJ Lee. Like that. That's how we ended the show.
We knew it was
coming out. Everybody knew, because you get the massive tease on SmackDown, on Raw the Monday before. So I'm not totally enamoured by Smack, but I think the US Open might actually be hindering it as a 2-hour show, in the sense that it takes up a good 30 to 35 minutes of the TV time, and you only get about 70 of that when you take out ads, etc. So
the same thing we've said for the last few months is occasionally throw it onto the PLE on a Saturday, because it elevates the challenge and the championship, but frees up some time on a Friday night. I think Ross' reason I was asking the question was for the perspective as well, that the one thing that Sami Zayn was missing was the ability to tell a compelling story outside of being the underdog. And ultimately, as Daz has basically said, it's proven that yes, he can have a good match, but there's a lot of substance missing there. Because I mean, I really don't. Even this whole guaranteed Sami Zayn wins in Saudi Arabia, either the Rumble or Mania the following year, I just don't see a path to that now that doesn't involve probably burying at least 5 or 6 people who are ahead of him in the queue.
I think it'll be interesting to see how they do it, just because it seems like he's almost faded into this weird little team versus team thing. They'll have this week, which we're speaking about. I'm kind of interested in a way, but more in like how are they going to salvage this type of way? There's that kind of intrigue where he's kind of been backed into a corner a little bit character-wise. Maybe he does need a proper change-up. Maybe that is as simple as he really needs to kind of throw this away and
And go to
almost
the other
start
company.
again.
I agree.
Not
Yeah.
even that. Like,
No, that's
you
what I
could
mean.
do
He should.
something.
I think he needs a wee bit of time off. Do you know what would be fantastic? Put the mask back on and go to AAA
Oh,
and
El
have a run.
Generico.
That would be
Mm.
insane. And if he
What,
ever returns
go up
from
against El
injury,
Grande Americano. That could be
no,
funny. Go from there.
Kevin Steen.
Right.
Kevin Steen and El Generico would be absolute scenes. But yeah, I just think he needs taken off of SmackDown altogether. I think the fact they moved him to SmackDown was the beginning of the end for his main event push, because it was 2 hours long. He was not going to get the chance to become a main eventer on SmackDown. But I think the returns of guys like Brock is evident for Monday night that Roman Reigns wants to be in the world title picture again. So there's just too many names in front of him for that to be a viable Royal Rumble winner main eventer at WrestleMania.
I mean, that was this morning's TikTok was the clip for last week's conversation, but it was saying that there does feel there's a difference between being a main eventer and being in the main event. And to be fair, numbers wise, they actually did quite well as a shot. And he's one of the guys that you're like, I'm with you. The move to SmackDown killed him. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily think for the same reasons you're saying, but because about 6 weeks before they get moved, Paul Heyman says, if you go to SmackDown and leave Seth Rollins alone, I will get you a WWE title match next week. And he went, no. And then 6 weeks later, he moves to become the US champion, which, I mean, just makes no sense. Speaking of good wrestling matches, one thing we have mentioned week in, week out since started this podcast 7-8 months ago is that no matter the result, no matter the outcome, putting on good wrestling matches week in, week out will get people over, will make people stars. I thought Carmelo Hayes versus Gunther last night was a very, very, very good television match. Once again, making the point that you can moan that Melo's not booked, but he is on the card every week. I'm going to get to the ins and outs of the tournament in a wee second, but Gunther comes out last night looking like the top guy in the company in terms of in-ring work. He just looks phenomenal. Again, unfortunate injury, but perhaps benefited just from a little break, because he's basically, I'm not saying he's been shoved in our throats, but he did a long Intercontinental title run. He's had 2 world title runs. He's been involved with Goldberg. He has been the focal point for so long on a Monday night. Whereas sometimes just that wee couple of months away means you're like, you know what, kind of wait till Gunther comes back. Probably one of these guys, it's a bit like Tiffany Stratton as well, where we say it's an unfortunate injury, but she's been so prominent on Friday night in a reign that unfortunately did go stale, not through her fault. A break's good. He's looking amazing, but I thought Melo come off looking really, really good. And again, I came away from last night's show thinking to myself, okay, I now see Melo as a potential dethroner of Dragunov before moving on. Whereas 6 weeks ago, I was like, nah, I've cooled on that idea. I don't think he's there.
I still don't think I'm not saying he's not good enough, because he is.
It's not the in-ring work that's the issue.
I just don't think he's packaged well enough right now to be that guy. I think Carmelo Hayes is still very much one of the future guys in the business. I still very much believe that. He was so hot in NXT. They've cooled on him for one reason or another. It might be backstage politics. It might be disciplinary. We don't really know. But his push went stone cold. Pardon the pun. But but you're right. People complain about Melo not getting his chances, but he's on TV quite a lot. He's been put in this tournament, which is a random draw, obviously. But he looked good when he went over on Friday night against Bronson Reed. He looked good in that match, and he looked great again last night. So there is a path there to build him up. And I think a lot of credit should really go to The Miz for that, because The Miz has helped lift him back onto TV more regularly. And work with a proper heel, and The Miz, and has put some more eyes on him. So I'm interested to see what's next. I don't think he'll dethrone Ilya. Naturally, I think it might be the ring general that does that himself. But I definitely think he is a future mid-card champion in the next 12 to 18 months. I think he will get his push. He has
been talked about as a potential Iron Man at the Rumble, which I like, because it's almost became an achievement. It's almost became an achievement or a passing of the torch or a rite of passage. And it's own, like, it's almost this. If you don't win the Rumble, it's almost the second best thing, because it's like you've been trusted to carry a match, and it gives you a push. You know, you put on a good show regardless of the outcome, type thing. So He's mentioned for that, Ross. You, as the resident NXT expert, did they ever miss a chance especially with the weakness of the tag division on Raw for Trick and Melo, just to have a longer together run on the main roster, even if it involved them having to do separate things post split? Because they could have had an amicable split, especially with the TNA introduction, which allowed Trick to go and obviously be their world champion for a period of time.
I think that would have been really cool to watch. And there's still obviously a chance that they could do something like that, because at some point in time, Trick's going to have to come up, and they could just do it on the main roster and just have a lovely time with it. Maybe by that point in time, Melo is where we think he could be, and then the ship has sailed, and it might not work as well. But I was impressed by this match, I must admit. I really, really liked the work here. I think Bleacher Report also agreed with us. I think they gave us like a solid B. They were very much a fan of the Melo match. They thought it was pretty good. It's just I know we spoke about it at the time when we saw it, but the Gunther throwback with the tweaks to his music and the robe is perfect, man. I cannot wait to see more of it. The guy was good when he was there before, and he was good as Volter. But this is going to be fascinating to see these next few months about what they do.
He does have that aura that we talk about. That only
he's got the Roman Reigns aura. He's got it.
Whoa!
He does. He does. Let's be.
He does.
He doesn't listen, but that's a whole other conversation. He's not on that level of aura.
He's on the path to that level.
He's on the path. I'm with you there, but he does not have it right now.
A PLE match with A2 would be fantastic.
Aye,
an aura off.
I would say it would feed families, but Roman's family's rather large. I mean, not.
Roman's been family for a long time.
And I do appreciate the lovely segue. Daz did mention the last time is now tournament, and I'm asking the question tonight: have injuries dampened this tournament? I'm obviously sitting here as the host. I've prepped this, and I'm saying injuries, but I think it has. I think first of all, losing Sheamus was a major knock, because we were
Sheamus isn't injured. I seen a TikTok of Sheamus, and it was on his wife's. It was not a TikTok, maybe an Instagram, but he was out with his wife shopping, I believe, and that man does not look hurt. But I get the purpose of it. I understand it. I get it.
So from the perspective of injuries, whether it's storyline or real or otherwise, you lose him, you replace him with The Miz. Spoiler alert: The Miz loses this week to LA Knight, and I feel as though
I love how you've just spoiled the surprise opponent for Friday night. Love that. I love how you said we're not going to spoil the card, and then instantly spoil the only surprise on the card.
I'm not going to deliberately run through the card, but I'm not going to avoid it where it makes sense to talk about it.
Run the VAR tape back. You said we will not spoil the show. I apologise on behalf of the host. He has. Don't get me wrong, it's a dog shit surprise, but he has spoiled it.
And it's everywhere anyway.
What did he spare you the disappointment? He spared you the disappointment.
Anyway, we've now lost. There's no one left in the bracket really that has that history with John Cena. It's now all Solo Sikoa has a little bit of history, but ultimately Solo beat Cena during that run of Cena lost every match for 4 years. So the Sheamus and The Miz gave us that, and it was whether we're going to get a new person or the hits again. That's now gone. We've now got heel versus heel in one semi-final. Gunther versus Solo because of Penta's injury, which did look very real because that shoulder's not meant to sit like that. That's very much... I think that's more than one injury. Dislocated shoulder and torn labrum and whatever else going on there.
It's a shame, all things considered, that the Lucha Bros are supposed to be back. That's a real shame.
And, real shame because they did go for the
reuniting of the... So, he can still do his bit to the ring, so really he should be fine and just get him back in there. I'm sure he'll be okay. But yeah, that injury is a fine line between a few months and a full year, really, isn't it?
You saw the frustration in his face, like he was kicking the barricade.
He knew.
And Solo looked pretty worried for him as well. So I feel like the reason I've left this bit to last and the kind of here's some topics to talk about, Simon is going to give me a nice segue into the prediction show. But is this tournament really working the way it was intended? Especially when we've seen the initial VT of who may have run it to who's actually in it, and also segueing back to previous conversation a couple of minutes ago. Should Solo Sikoa, in hindsight, have held the US title for longer? Because I feel like Sami Zayn's bit was just pointless now. And I'm looking at that and going, again, this thing we have every few months where, is Solo getting lost in the middle of this pack that's going on? again, if you want to go read the spoilers for this Friday, you can go read the spoilers for this Friday. I'm interested to know how Monday night was supposed to fit into this Friday and how this Friday was supposed to fit into the semi-final, because was Solo originally the pick to win?
Yes.
Hard to tell.
It seems to be that it was.
It must have been. There's no way he was going to lose on the build-up to the 5-on-5, which we already know the outcome of. But to have him lose and then go over, it just doesn't make sense. So I think he was the pick, but just not the way that they... But see, to be honest, I think it's the best possible outcome for Penta, obviously injury aside, because he doesn't eat the pin. He doesn't actually lose, because we've spoken about how often... Yeah, Penta gets pinned. Penta v Pin Balor was a pin-off. But yeah, it is a shame what's happened with the tournament. Whether or not Sheamus is actually injured, we don't really know. I would have preferred to have seen Sheamus wrestle, right? Whoever might be wrestling on Friday night, who it could be, we do not know. But, I mean, I'm sure that... I wanted a little bit more from the tournament, but with the names that are left, only one will disappoint me in the final match, if it's that person versus Cena. And not because I don't rate them. Not because I don't rate them. It makes the least sense of the people left.
It makes the least sense.
Yeah, he doesn't need it.
I think we'll probably
Cody
have
doesn't need anything, and he wins everything. So
we'll have like a good breakdown of the actual tournament. It'll be interesting to have a proper reflection once we know the outcome, but before the main event, if you will.
I would like
the matches themselves though have all been pretty good. So
yeah, the matches in terms of for TV perspective, from a TV wrestling match, they've been okay. There's been some, I think good matches.
Maybe some people are a bit upset because it's just whatever. If it's not your pick that's not in there, then I think not us. It's not any of us on here. It's mostly people in IWC are getting a bit upset.
The thing I'm probably most disappointed in is that we brought back Mark Cardona and we brought back Nick Nemeth, neither of whom won, to progress guys who then have subsequently just dropped out anyway, whether it be real injury or fake injury. So I said it last week when we spoke about it, the pairings should have been different. I think they've got the right names in the tournament. They've paired them up wrong, in my opinion.
Yes.
But they know the story they're trying to tell. We're trying to piece it together week by week, so they know how they want
it's
that
really
to go.
interesting. There was see the first week of the tournament, there was no bracket. People were asking.
No, I know people were complaining that there was no bracket. Yeah,
and the bracket only appeared sort of last week after like 1.5 rounds of matches. So people were actually questioning if the plan was just to figure it out
as you go
on the fly. We basically reseed it, quote unquote, reseed it and make the matches up, which might have worked better, because the person that may not have appeared this Friday night probably should have. If you're going to have Matt Cardona or Nick Nemeth lose, Zack Ryder, Dolph Ziggler, they come back with their own names, they might as well have lost to one of these people to push them on. I feel like even the people who lost, who should have lost to the wrong people, and some of the people who won beat the wrong people. It just it's turned out a bit of a mess. And I think you're looking at it now and you're saying, knowing the semi-final pairings, you've got Jey Uso versus Rusev this week. Unfortunately, there's probably only one winner based on who's been getting pushed all year. And LA Knight versus TBA. And again, LA Knight's not going to win because he never gets put over. It's just not going to harm. And then on the other side, you're looking at... I think
he will go over Jey. I do think he will go over Jey. And the semis. Oh well, yeah. But I mean, everybody knows that anyway.
Aye. And I do, obviously on the other side, like is there a world in where Penta could have beat Gunther? Maybe they've had a good match before, they've had good chemistry, but probably not. But I
really
see
want
a world where
Solo
beats him.
Well, I do, and it comes down to the MFT as the only way realistically he can win. I'll be honest, I didn't see Melo beating Bronson Reed in the build up to Warrior. I didn't see that coming. Do you know what I mean? I think there is still room for a swerve, but I think the injuries have hampered the ability to swerve. Just before you segue quite nicely into WarGames and Survivor Series, I would just like to say that you now have my full and undivided attention as Mark Wilson's Partick Thistle are now joint top of the Scottish Championship. So boing boing, let's do it, gentlemen.
The other thing I was going to say is, as we have talked throughout, and I'm going to just heavy plug as we move through the segue, as we are heading into awards season. Saturday Morning Squash was Daz and I talking through our favourite tag teams of the year.
Yep, it's good fun.
A nice short list for the final awards. We're going to do the same after this show for the women's wrestlers of 2025. at the World Show, we'll be giving out the Golden Shovel Award, which will be a nice fake title belt for the most confusing booking decision of the year. And just to throw out a nice early nominee, this won't be like a long list show, this will just be able to pick on the night. But with the injuries, with some of the other issues that we're seeing with the likes of LA Knight, one thing that I would put on the table when it comes to that conversation is just Triple H's inability to pull the fucking trigger when somebody's hot and just say, you know what, let's just run with something, even if it's for a few weeks, and just see what happens. Because we've so many missed opportunities, particularly on the women's side, I think, this year. But on the men's side, there has been opportunities, I think.
Is it all down to Triple H? Because honestly, I think we've seen in the behind the scenes, the WWE Unreal, we've seen it that they agree as a whole creative team on who to push and who gets the rub. They go by majority vote. So I'm not defending Triple H by any means, because whether or not he pushes people, etc., his booking has been beyond questionable at times.
His job title is head of creative.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's like a football manager. Like the buck will fall to him. I understand that.
Even if it's a democratic choice, he's made decision. That's the process.
But sometimes they get it right, and I think that we overlook all of the good booking because we like to focus in on the negative.
We overlook the good booking because Cody Rhodes is still fucking champion.
No, listen. I get that. Because the good booking for Triple H was to get John Cena to do a heel turn. The fact that the heel turn was arguably the worst story of the summer is because of The Rock. So it's actually a genius. It's genius by Triple H to make that Cena's final title run, but it's let down during the run by other factors. So, and it's like Ross said, you get back into a corner story wise. You just get, and I actually think he does a really good job navigating these stories and getting people out of holes and shuffling things on. But they've also parted company with some creative in the last few months as well, who quite clearly were not pulling their weight. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I feel like that Saturday squash is going to be hours and hours long.
I think the honest way, it might be a Wednesday main pod Saturday squash follow up. I think we'll have to split it or two, but that does give us a nice segue into the WarGames predictions, as we're roughly halfway through the pod, and obviously we can mentally predict what the card may or may not look like. Now, realistically, they're going to open well WarGames and close well WarGames matches, most likely what's going to happen. But I'm going to start off with Cena versus Dom, just because I want to segue for the Cena tournament and the Dom match here. Up until 5 days ago, I personally only saw this match going one way, and that was that John Cena drops his title back to Dom Mysterio. Dom Mysterio continues on this mega run. Ultimately, he's going to go over as the face in San Diego and probably start this push towards hopefully pulling the trigger after just saying Triple H should start pulling the trigger. But there was something mid last week where I was like, this doesn't feel quite right to me, and I couldn't figure out in my head what it was. I couldn't put it together. I couldn't make sense of it. One of Santi's apps, Cash Reels, popped up on my feed, and he explained it quite well, and it made so much sense to me. Despite the tournament falling flat, they have built up the importance of John Cena's last match so much that him losing his second last match would almost kill the last match. So I'm not saying that I'm taking Cena over Dom. I'm just throwing that into the ether and saying, I guess, is it as straightforward as we probably thought it was 2 weeks ago? Ross, come to you, because you were like...
It's probably it's a really good point, actually, because, like, John Cena's last match does not need a title on the line, but why wouldn't you put a title on the line? Because it adds that extra intrigue of, is he going to win and actually go home with this belt? And you always ask that question of, no, he won't, but he might. And I think that alone makes it a really, really intriguing prospect, because yes, Dom's in his hometown. Yes, I am going to presume there is going to be some Rey Mysterio level involvement, shenanigans, if you will. Yes, I think we could be onto something here, because we know that a loss doesn't really hurt Dom, and we know that you can still do the face turn by he'll get booed out of the building because he's so damn good at doing what he does. But if John Cena wins that match and lifts his arm at the end to congratulate him, that will be the beginning of what we all think should and needs to happen with him anyway. So there's a way of sort of having your cake and eating it too if you go down that route. It's interesting.
If I throw over to you, Daz, just I don't know what we've discussed there in asking this additional question of this: is this part of the issue of losing Sheamus from the tournament? Because at least he gave that little insight of the next Grand Slam champion versus overwhelming favourite Gunther, who realistically won the IC title, probably doesn't do anything for the title or happened because where he is and what he did for the title a couple of years ago. Now, Triple H has said when things become so predictable, let's change it up. Unfortunately, the last time he said that, he put on the worst role I've ever watched in my entire life, which ended with Brock Lesnar turning up. So, just without getting your prediction at the moment, does that open any sort of intriguing lines where we were sitting? And also, does the tournament impact how the tournaments went? Could that impact on this match on Saturday night?
Right. It's weird because because I'm trying to break it. I'm trying not to give away my prediction and what I say.
If it feels like you need to go that way, then go for it, because you can do the first prediction if you so wish.
I'll be able to chop it up enough. So the way the tournament's going, you're right. There's intrigue with certain competitors, and that if it is Solo Sikoa or LA Knight or even Jey Uso or whoever it could be that's wrestling LA Knight on Friday night, that we have no idea who it might be, could possibly be one of the greatest intercontinental champions of recent years who it could be wrestling. Then yeah, I feel like Cena retaining the title would be a good thing because you've got the prospect of actually putting someone over properly with a title, because whoever it is that goes over Cena gets a huge rub regardless in their last match, but a wee bit of gold would be an added bonus. The one man that doesn't need the gold or the rub, if we're being really honest, is Gunther. He does not need that rub, but he deserves it. He doesn't need it. So it's really interesting because I also don't think that Dom needs that strap anymore. I don't feel like he needs it. But what are we going to do with Dom in the meantime if he doesn't have it? How are we going to keep him hot?
Especially with the Lucha Bros issue, because that was going to be the big story in Triple A, which is now changed it completely.
That was going to be Triple A work. And it still gives him the chance to work Penta on Raw as well. It was a good matchup. Whether they just pivot and have him work Rey Fenix with the IC title, I don't know if that's it. I think injuries again have probably... See, if you'd asked me this last week, I would have told you 100% that Dom was likely to win the title. I don't think Cena needs to win either of his last two matches. I don't think he needs to. I think that crowds are just going to be grateful to see him one last time. I don't think the result is in any way, shape or form relatable. I'll kick it off with my prediction. I still think Dom goes over in his hometown. I don't see the joy in having Rey cost Dom the match. I don't think it's a strange narrative because it makes Rey the heel almost, even though he's doing it to help John Cena. So he'll get a massive pop on the night if that's what happens. But do you want John Cena's last PLE match to be a screwy finish that he wins? Probably not. But also, how do you then book Rey and Dom from there? That's not the most ideal way to do the split, in my opinion, and flip it to make Dom the monster face. I don't think that's the right way to go. So I'm going to go that Dom wins the title, and I think he's going to win it clean. I think it's going to be a clean win over Cena. It's going to be a proper passing of the torch, and I think Cena will win his last match because Gunther does not need the rub. So that's who I think will win the
I do love that we've all just assumed that Gunther's winning this tournament, though. I do like that we're all sort of in the agreement.
Gunther can't lose to all three.
Yeah. The only one he can realistically lose to is Jey because he's lost to Jey already. But my God, if he taps out to Jey again, would you just release the guy? Because
I know.
I think that's not a tap out, but I do think that's how that one might go. But we'll get there. We will get there. Folks at home, don't you worry. In terms of this one, though, I think to make it the most interesting for me, I think even before the chat we've had tonight, I was probably leaning this way just because we've had a few months now where it's been lots of fan service and it's been lots of big moments, good promos, big matches, and I feel like you can continue that on by doing this. So I would like to see, and I hope that Cena does indeed retain this title, just to keep that going. We've seen it with one or two moments as well outside of Cena in the last few weeks, more on Raw than everything. I think it wasn't this week's, but was it last week's? There was moments where there was like house show elements almost of the show. There's clearly some sort of joined up thinking somewhere. So I think I'm going to go Cena here, but I don't think there's necessarily a bad way of this one going, because I think we all think this is going to be a banger of a match anyway. So I think we'll be sports entertained for sure.
I'm gonna go full on mental fantasy booking mode here, and I'm going to predict that we are going to get the monster face turn, and I'm going to predict that Cena retains though, and everything suggests that Dom should win this back. Apart from the fact that I kind of thought the AAA feud, because the work with Penta and Rey Fenix could bleed into Raw, that would give him a compelling enough story that the outcome didn't matter for him. He would still let the party be the AAA Mega Champion and work between the two shows. And until we know the extent of the injuries, let's face it, Penta's out through Mania at least, isn't he? Until we figure out what that might look like, I need to kind of look at this match in isolation as it is. So I'm going to take Cena retaining, and I'm going to call for the Judgment Day split. And I'm going to have McDonough and Balor beating down Dom, costing Dom on accident, beat them down after the match, and I'm going to call for Ray to make the save and have super Mysterio faces in San Diego.
Interesting.
We do not want
We don't want that. We don't want that because I do want to see Ray versus Dom at Mania.
Trips, we know you listen to this. We know you listen to this podcast. Do not book that shit.
But I'm telling you, I just think that's the ultimate face turn. I'm going to stick with the Cena prediction as a prediction, but that's a wee bit of additional. This is how I could see this stupidly going on Saturday night, that monster face turn, which takes us through into the match that we opened, or we talked about quite a bit earlier on, and that is the women's WarGames match. Now, I don't have a lot to say about this match. If I was bringing the card up so I can make sure I got the names right, because there's so many of them. It's a little bit thrown together. There is some stories there. I guess it's the unusual thing, I guess, especially compared to the men's side of things, as our world champions aren't involved on either side, which is highly unusual, especially if you're looking at it as an all-stars type match. You're basically saying that the world champions are quite far down the pecking order. The good thing about this match is, though, Ross, coming to you as a resident NXT expert, we will hopefully see a nice showcase of Lash Legend, who is someone who we have been looking for on the main roster for a number of months, who obviously got the call up a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see. She was actually the only one that, when Becky did a little promo last night, didn't get a subtle dig. If you cast your mind back, everyone else kind of got some praise and a subtle dig, whereas she actually didn't, which I found that quite interesting. She's been able to hang before. I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a thing that probably propels her in on a more permanent basis, which is good, because we've said before that there isn't an awful lot of women superstars that have that kind of physique and build. There's really not too many of them, whereas I think she can go on like someone like Jade Cargill, where we have a little bit of concerns about what she's actually like in a ring. Lash Legend can go. This one, though, it's kind of like the men's match, and that I am really struggling to figure out. I think just because there's just too many moving pieces, I really struggle to work out how on earth this finishes and what side wins or who wins. Because, I mean, how the hell do you pick between 10 people about who's going to win? It's I don't know about you guys, and the people at home, but it's not easy trying to work out a winner here. I
have cooked up an absolute storm of booking for this match, and only because I want it to be interesting. I'm not enamoured by this match at all, although it is stacked in terms of participants. There's no getting away from that. Io is going to be a joy to watch. She's 1 to 100 that she will moonsault off of the cage. Trash can optional. Whether or not she wants to put that on again. I'm really looking forward to seeing Lash Legend. I think this is probably the worst possible match for her to be thrown into. And the basis that the way that the teams are matched, the way that the things are matched up is odd. I don't really get it. Is she in there to eat a pin? I don't know, but I don't think so. And that might give you a wee inkling of where my my head is going, I am booking a monster turn in this match, and it is a heel turn, and it's Rhea Ripley. I think everything points to Charlotte Flair being the weak link, if you like, in that team, because of their past history. I actually think that Rhea is going to attack Io Sky, and that breaks my heart to say that out loud. But I think something has to give, because I'm not going to give away my prediction, but the chances are both people want both of the face teams to win these WarGames matches. It can't happen, and John Cena drop a title potentially all in one night. You can't have all the heels who scoop up Survivor Series. It's not going to happen. But I think the heel team wins this. I think the Kabuki Warriors, Lash Legend, Becky Lynch, and Nia Jax win this one. I think it makes the most sense because the all-star face team doesn't make sense. I don't get why they would win. It doesn't really make sense to me. The only way I can see the face team winning is Lash Legend and Nia Jax making a statement for the women's tag team titles. But it seems like a hell of a vehicle to use WarGames for that. For what is a mid-card title, it seems like a strange vehicle to use to put that point across as the booking for it. So, yeah, I think it'll be some in the cage shenanigans, like we had it in NXT a couple of times, where it will be Io's turn to get in the ring and she will be obliterated by Rhea Ripley. But Io normally starts these things, so honestly, who knows? Who knows? But I'm going to book. I'm going to book the heel team.
I'm going to follow on and say that I'm struggling. I'm struggling with both these matches, and probably the women's match more, because if I look at the men's match, if I look at the two matches first and say that realistically, as you've said, you won't have two face teams winning, you won't have two heel teams winning. The assumption would be one face team wins and one heel team wins. And then if you look at it on paper, I think the face team on the women's side is much stronger than the heel team. I think there's a gap. I think you've got Becky and Asuka and a bit of a drop off, whereas in the other team you've got four bona fide proper main eventers and AJ Lee, who was and could be, depending on which level she gets back to. And you look at the men's side and you say, well, you've got Jimmy Uso, the pin eater, you've got Logan Paul, the pin eater, and you've actually got one other guy in the heel team who's a potential pin eater, which I will save until that prediction. And on the basis of the only way you could turn Rhea Ripley heel would be to have her kick the shit out of Io Sky, is pretty much the only way you could do it. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I like the idea, and I do think there'll be some fracturing in that face team. So I think the heel team are united enough in the sort of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type scenario that that's enough for them to get through the match. And I do think Becky will stand tall at the end because she's just dropped the IC title, just for the optics of your top star looking strong. I'm not sure who eats the pin.
AJ Lee.
It should be AJ Lee, but they might want to protect her.
It'll be Alexa Bliss, probably. It probably will be Alexa.
But I have the women's heel team winning as well, which obviously based on what I said will give away the prediction for the men's. But to me, there's more depth and layers to that. Ross, are you 3 for 3, or are you going to?
I think based on when you think about the other matches on the card, like obviously we're going to dive into the men's match. We've dove into the Cena match. We're probably going to very quickly skim past La Primera and Nikki Bella, and that there's only one person who can win that. And spoiler alert, it's not Nikki Bella. I think you're right. I think the heel team, they just feel a little bit more convincing here, though. We will get to the men's problems in just a moment about how they set up some of the stuff for that on Monday. Some of it's interesting, some of it's just utterly bizarre and didn't make any sense. But for this one, I will join you in that. I think the heels will win this. Who, I don't know, but yeah.
The only thing we might get is a double swerve where the face team holds together and the heels team have a fracture that they've managed to paper over the cracks in the last few weeks, but because they've obviously teased the face team being more fractured. But I think it's relatively black and white. Unfortunately, I think that the heel team take that one, which you have also set up for a nice transition to match number 3 on the card that I put together, and that is Stephanie Vickers versus Nikki Bella. I'm not going to waste any time on this.
Next.
It's the total waste of everybody's time. 3-0, Stephanie Vickers, Nikki Bella embarrasses herself.
Watch Nikki Bella.
I think it's one of those ones that we have spoke about, Arna, where this surfaces a here is a name that everyone knows La Primera is going to go beat her, and sort of starts the cementing of her. We've spoken about it before, where if Triple H thinks things are getting too stale, change it up. But changing it up would mean they'd be have to run this match again. I don't necessarily think many people, other
Stephanie
than maybe
McHale's
Nikki
done
Bella,
if she was this match.
Whoever
probably
drops
agree
the
unless there's
title
something
to
screwy.
Nikki Bella,
Yeah.
if anyone dropped the title to Nikki Bella in this day and age, you are donezo. I'm afraid.
But yeah, I think we're all in agreement there.
It's actually at the stage where I really hope she doesn't pull out the corkscrew and sock to win it, because I think that's like too
Doesn't
much.
need it.
I think it should be easier than that.
Should be, you know something? It should be a squash, and I'm not saying that just because I don't like Nikki Bella and I don't think she can hang at this level anywhere near it. But I think it's what Steph needs. Steph needs. It doesn't have to be a 15-minute match. 4 or 5 minutes. Put her in the ring, beat her up, give her that little bit where she tries to turn the momentum, and then flatten her. Pin 1, 2, 3, and let us get on with WarGames.
And hopefully that gives us enough time for a US Open challenge. Men's WarGames match, which I have tentatively scheduled as a likely main event for obvious reasons.
Should be.
So obviously we're asking big picture title of the pod this week, is this match really adding any value? Is it doing anything for us? And again, up until last night, I'm saying no. And after last night, I'm saying fuck no. The faces, for one, there's just last year's team, but we've swapped Sammy for Cody, which
is a sideways step.
It's a sideways step. I was obviously extremely interested in Roman declaring his interest in the title, which I think is brilliant because I do have intrigue as to at least it's intrigue as to how it's going to go. It does mentally in my head change what I thought may or may not have happened at WrestleMania next year and beyond, which I'm going to get into as we go through the prediction. But as you alluded to, Ross, there was some confusing elements, notably Cody Rhodes saying to Roman, "What business do you have with the Vision?" despite the fact that he's been feuding with them since Paul Heyman punched him in the box at WrestleMania, and then saying "Welcome to my team," said team of which he joined last year, and last week, which I have just pointed out as Roman's team from last year. So it's.
And then Roman hits out with a "I don't like you, you don't like me." He's like, well, why not? You're all supposed to be nice. You're supposed to be the good guys. You're not supposed to inherently kind of like each other on some level. Otherwise, is this tweeners versus heels? I mean, that promo and Monday night just kind of seemed like they changed it 5 minutes before they went on air because it was just all a bit.
I don't know. I think there's a bit of an ulterior motive with that promo in the sense that Cody was dwarfed by the star power in that ring last night, and it was so noticeable. And Punk is a way bigger name than Cody will ever be. To the E, and we've spoken about Roman. Roman has ascended beyond almost anything we've ever seen before, probably with the exception of John Cena, The Rock, and Stone Cold. If we're being really honest, I think the motive here is to build towards that inevitable Cody Rhodes heel turn. I don't know if they'll ever be brave enough to pull the trigger on it, as we've alluded to earlier in the pod, that they don't like pulling the trigger on things. I thought it was extremely noticeable last night that Cody was the B+ player, to use the authority term, in that ring last night with 2 main eventers, and that's one main eventer who's a half step below, as we spoke about before, the other guy in that ring. So you're third in line. I am intrigued by this, right, because it's evident Roman's not going to be the guy to fuck this up for the face team. It's so evident that he's not going to be. Would I like it to be Cody Rhodes? 100%, because I want him to do something interesting for a change. I don't know. I see it first when I watched the promo and he declared his interest in the title. I thought he was talking to CM Punk, right? I thought that's who that was aimed at. And when Punk asked him, I don't know, I think it's still a wee bit. I still think it will be Cody and Roman. I still think that's where we're going with this. Maybe not Mania. I think it might be before that. Possibly a Royal Rumble appearance. But yeah, it did give me a little bit of intrigue. I never even thought of running Punk Reigns if that's the route they want to go down. It's not a pairing that crossed my mind as a front runner. I still very much believe a man in the heel team will be taking that title off CM Punk in the near future, and one who may or may not have slipped on his arse and done a back roll last night. Possibly the greatest moment of TV ever.
Had the aura to laugh it off and just crack on with it.
I mean, how could he not look at him?
No.
But yeah, so I am intrigued by this one. The build up to it has been odd. The attack on Cody Rhodes, odd. He looked like he'd
I
been
think
beaten within an inch of his life, and then 25 minutes later he was interfering in a match. So didn't really make sense. Yeah, I don't really get the angle we're trying to push, and the person I probably want to talk about the most in all of this is Drew McIntyre.
he feels
He's
lost in this, by
only
the way.
in this. He's only in this match for one reason, surely, right? Because the, I think the face team are going to win this, right? Purely on the basis, as I said earlier, both heel teams won't win or both face teams won't win. So I'm going with a male face team win, which means Jimmy hasn't eaten the pin. And when you look at Cody gave a damning indictment on the vision and pointing out that Bronson Reed is the best in that stable in his promo, which is probably the most interesting things Cody's done in a long, long time. So when I'm trying to book this in my head and I look at how this match goes, I can't see Logan Paul eating the pin. I just can't, because he's probably looked the best out of this WarGames build-up, in my opinion. He's been heavily involved, and I think we're trying to build towards a full-time run for him. I hope that's where this is headed. Maybe not as part of the vision. So, are we really going to pin Braun Breaker? Is that really going to happen? And I just don't know if we're going to... I think it's going to be Drew that eats the pin. So my question is then, what's the payoff off the back of this for Drew? Because you can't just eat another pin and stay as part of the division. I'm not going to have that. I'm going to kick him out for losing the match. So, this match confuses me because they've just built it to be an all-star match. But I don't see the payoff. I certainly don't see the payoff in the division winning, because they would have to stay together. And that doesn't make sense. That makes no sense to me.
Before you go towards your... I know, obviously, we've all kind of said the same thing, that they won't have two faces and two heel team wins, and we went 3-0 for the heels, so I'm guessing we're working towards the three of us probably taking the face team here, but it's how we get to that. And when I was talking about the women's match, and I was alluding to, I think there's another pin eater in the heel team. I wasn't alluding to Drew, I was alluding to Brock.
No, but I don't think Brock will win.
Well, so the reason I do have madness, there's logic in the madness, right? But there seemed to be some heavy rumours that the original plan was after he squashed Cena, that Cena was going to pin him in WarGames.
That would make sense. That would be a good payoff, yep.
And I just wonder if they'll have Roman pin him.
No.
And work towards Roman versus Brock again before the Roman versus Cody. I can see it, and I don't like it, but I can see it.
I don't. The only reason I don't see it is because Brock needs to win the next big feud, right? Because
Brock's winning the title. Brock's winning the title in the Chamber.
No, but what I'm trying to say, he's not, because the Chamber's for a match at WrestleMania. It's not going to be for the title. That they build it now that you win. One main event match is decided by the Rumble, the other decided by the Chamber. But my point is that if you want to have Brock and Roman, one of them doesn't main event WrestleMania, because they have to lose to the other. So it's a bit like, see, we spoke about Jey Uso. You can't have him get pinned one week and then win the world title the next. Do you know what I mean? It didn't make sense. This wouldn't make sense either, albeit these guys are far bigger names. I just think that adding Brock in to have him eat the pin doesn't make sense. But I also don't understand how Brock is going to survive in this match, because he's far too big to be in that cage. He's just a big ball of meat. Like, I don't get it.
Is that how it's going to work? Is he's going to get stuck in the cage?
He's just not going to go in.
Cannot leave.
He's just not going to go in until, like, we're ready for the pin, and he's just going to drag people out and throw them about, and just, I don't know.
Here's a thought, right? So, coming to you, Ross, on your thoughts with this. Logan came out with the vision, right, to their music, which was obviously an interesting point, which Daz has kind of pointed to, maybe not directly, but he was saying that, you know, is he part of it? Is he no part of it? Is it full time? Is it no full time? Heyman came out with Lesnar last night. Is Heyman and Lesnar turning on Braun and Bronson? And that gives you a path to the faces winning, and maybe gives you a feud for one of them with Lesnar, because that's the type of match that could help get the guys over with the size, the way they walk.
That could work.
Because I can't look past the face team because of what we said about the women's match, but I just can't see the how. Because the Jimmy Uso's the obvious pin eater, but he can't eat pins every. Well, maybe he can eat pins every week, but
tell that to Pin Balor.
It's certainly a good option if that's the way they want to go. I'm at the stage though with this one where I might have to go on to Google and tell it to flip a coin for me, because I actually cannot really work out. I think because they certainly seem to be setting up potential feuds within the teams, that this one, it's like, I'm not even sure if it matters who wins
I don't think it does
with
either.
the men's match too much, which is interesting because then it really boils down to how good's the match itself. I'm not too fussed about the actual outcome as much. I do like your theory though. I do like it.
I think the outcome does matter. I think the outcome does matter because if that heel team, but if that heel team wins, where do you book them beyond WarGames? Because you can't book them to win, shake hands, and move on. Like the women's heel team is, I can already see the payoff. If Becky stands tall, Becky goes straight into that program with AJ Lee because that's where that's headed, right? Aye. And then the other two are tag teams, so all you need is Lash Legend and Nia Jax to come out, celebrate, and say, right, next we want your tag team titles, right? And there you go. That team progresses. What do you do with Drew, with Logan, and with Brock? So I agree. I think a breakup or a turn on the vision makes sense, but I just, what is Drew's purpose? If that's the case, that's the one that doesn't make sense to me.
He feels like the 10th man in this match, which feels so weird to say, but he feels the guy that doesn't really fit. Obviously, he could argue he might have been the replacement for Seth, to be fair.
Unless we're going to make him a Paul Heyman guy. I don't know.
I mean, I've seen it not work for him, for a lot of people that aren't named Brock Lesnar.
See if you want to talk like linking it all together. Think about Cody's promo. You build them up and I beat them. Maybe he needs Paul Heyman to win that title. I don't know.
It's so interesting. It's weird that we're so aligned in that we all think the face team wins this, but we don't know how to get there. I mean, there is an obvious path to the face team losing it as well, and that is that Roman just goes, fuck this, and spears both Cody and Punk and leaves them there and lets Division pick up the scraps. Because even I think after watching Monday Night, I'm like, yeah, Roman, I just see Roman winning the Rumble now.
There's an Uso There's an Uso part in this as well that Roman said something really weird on Raw last night. He's here to see his investment in the Usos through. What the fuck does that mean? What is that? Because there's nothing in it for the Usos. The Usos won it and they go back to like Jimmy goes back to waiting for his baby to be born, and Jay goes back to the tournament because that's what Jay's running. So what does that actually mean as investment in the Usos? I'm almost intrigued. Does he take Jay's spot? And I don't know. I just it doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. They've hurt my little brain.
I'm trying to give, like, I don't think I can give it any logical outcome. Lesnar's there for a reason, and Heyman came to Lesnar last night, and whether it's that eventually it sets up Roman versus Brock again, because like I've already said and it's why I've got an issue with Gunther winning the tournament, is because I think Gunther retires Lesnar at SummerSlam next year in Minnesota. I think that's a match we've all wanted to see for a number of years, and I think it has to happen. But I just don't want that to be Gunther's gimmick, like either. That's,
I mean, it's okay to a point, but you're going to run out of big names to retire.
But it also means that you
retire in R-Truth.
But what it means is, like, see if somebody's having a retirement match and it's not Gunther, you're like, all right, well, we're keeping him away so they can have him win his last match, and if it's Gunther, you know they're losing it. And I really.
Well, that's not true because Cena's going to beat him. I've already told you that tonight.
Aye, but I'm hoping. I think I'm worried that if they do something tonight, it's going to like have the butterfly effect of ruining that potential match down the line. And just based on what I've seen, like, I still expect Roman versus Seth at a Mania at some point. I still expect Roman to eventually face Punk. I do expect Roman versus Cody 3, and I probably still half expect Roman versus Brock one more time. But considering we're expecting Brock to not have long left, and all the other matches scream Rumble, Mania, or SummerSlam, it's like that's like 5 years of matches basically if you're doing it properly. Yeah, I don't see a world in which even Roman does 5 years.
I think Roman has his eyes on both titles.
That was my worry, is they unify them again.
I think you might. By the way, that's a possibility. Aye. And I think that you do get the opportunity to do it. You get your Brock versus Punk. Brock wins the title. You get your Reigns versus Rhodes 3 where Reigns wins the title, and then you get your Reigns versus Brock. He retires Brock. And then eventually you'll get Seth when he's, able to do things again. If he's able to do things again.
You just wonder, because we do always talk about TKO as the money versus the WWE as the story bit, and maybe they're looking at it and saying, well, actually having 2 world titles isn't really adding that much money, and we feel like when you've got 2 face champions, which you do right now, you're splitting the attention between them, and maybe the merch sales is impacted, maybe they're not selling as many replica title belts. I don't know, but
this is something I've been thinking. I know how I spoke about there being an off season. last week, and I was saying that there's that
wee lull.
and the squash where you get between SummerSlam and Survivor Series, you're treating like an off-season / pre-season to get built back in. I agree with you. I think that they might be heading for unification because Cena's talked about when he moves on, it will be a new era for wrestling. I actually think they might eventually amalgamate the shows and run 1 3 or 4 hour wrestling show a week. I think is where it might head eventually. They won't get rid of NXT and all that kind of stuff, but I think that's might be where they're headed because they've got so much talent that they can't showcase them over 2 shows, and they're just because you hit the nail on the head. TKO do business very differently. You don't need 2 world champions. They don't need it. They just don't. It's not how they do business. It's not how they do it.
I mean, you don't need 2 world champions when you've got your women on fire as well. But again, you then have to amalgamate the women's division, which I would argue needs 2 world titles at the moment.
However, what I will say is, I think they could amalgamate the shows and have a women's wrestling show on its own because they're very good with their women's division and what they do with UFC. Their women's division is shit hot. They're very, very good with their women's division. I'm not talking about in the near future. I'm talking this a couple of years away to the point where they get TV deals and all that kind of stuff.
I was going to say, you're talking when Netflix has it all under one umbrella. At that 100%. Point, you can basically do anything.
You will just get a weekly. It will probably be a Monday or a Wednesday, or we'll just slap it in the middle of the week, and you'll get your PLEs when you get your PLEs. But you're right; it's so business orientated that unification of the titles is money for TKO. That's might be how they view it.
Does that sound like pie in the sky? Because you know what they do, they can sell tickets to an event when they do the reunification, and then when they split them back up, you have another intriguing story for 2 months where you have a tournament to determine another world heavyweight champion. But if you're a TKO board member and you're maybe not a wrestling fan, you're sitting there asking the question, why is our biggest star not holding a world title when we have to?
See, before that, you answer, Ross. Right, I don't know how much you know about UFC and the way that they work it, right?
Nothing.
Right, perfect. So UFC, I think we're on UFC, I don't even know what number we're on anymore, we're on 300 and something maybe? 308 or 30, I don't know. Right, anyway, but basically, the UFC run big events, and they just number them, a bit like we number WrestleMania, but they have like 25, 30 a year, right? They have loads of them. But that's not their only show, but it's their primetime show, right? So what I mean is they amalgamate Raw, SmackDown into one show. But what they also have before their show is they have UFC prelims before every show. So you get like 2 hours of prelims before you get your 4 hour main card. I think that's where they might adopt that, where instead of having 5 hours split across 2 days, you might get 6.5 or 7 hours split over one evening, where nobody, whether you watch the prelims or you don't, you want to tune in for the main event. And I think that is a tried and tested formula for TKO, and it works with the UFC because they have on their main shows, they have like 5 main bouts on the card, and generally speaking, you normally get 2 titles defended. So I don't know. I actually think it could work. I just don't know how it would work in the realms of kayfabe, etc.
Only thing that would stop them is if going from 2 shows to 1 show impacts obviously bottom line, that line, because you're selling half the tickets if you're only running 1 show a week, but you're half production costs.
But then
and you could trim
the UFC. But then UFC has its own arena. For the most part, they have their own arena. Obviously, they do shows in Saudi, etc., which is where that's headed anyway. You know the relationship they've got with Saudi already. So
we could do a whole show on that, but aye, back to the question.
That's huge.
Is it pie in the sky, or are they asking the question of why is our biggest star not holding our biggest title, or one of them?
Because the issue you've got is if he holds one, the other guy is insignificant.
The other guy has to be Gunther, essentially, or Rollins.
Yep.
Otherwise, they will peel and seconds. Well, that's it for this week's main podcast, guys. It is Survivor Series WarGames this Saturday, midnight UK start time. Take it easy, and we'll see you back for the squash.
Boing boing.